All right, let's jump right in. Um, Anyone running a Xenon node or thinking about it, you want to hear this. We're talking about the latest from the Xenon OP-SIG meeting.
Yeah, lots to unpack here, especially if you're all about the nitty-gritty of how things work behind the scenes.
Exactly. We'll try to make this super digestible, though. Hit those key takeaways.
Sounds good. Where do we even begin?
Well, let's start with action items. Remember that troubleshooting script we talked about last time?
Oh, yeah, the one for nodes.
That one. Good news. It's already live.
Awesome. Less headaches for everyone.
Definitely. And
Right.
DSNUTS is still working on that local backup and restore process.
Makes sense. That's a big one. For making nodes easier to manage, right?
Huge. And on the testing front, George's is kicking off performance testing on the, what was it, HyperCMES testnet?
Yep, Hypercripus. The goal is to create a framework that can be applied to Go Xenon too.
Interesting. So we're talking about a standardized way to measure performance across different implementations.
Right, which is going to be super valuable down the line.
Okay, now for the juicy stuff. Let's talk about TikToker's DigitalOcean node. That was a whole saga.
Oh yeah, their node was syncing so slowly. Even with like 8 vCPUs and 32 gigs of RAM,
I know, right? It's like, shouldn't that be more than enough?
apparently not. Turns out Xenon uses LevelDB, which is single-threaded. So just having a ton of cores doesn't necessarily translate to faster syncing.
Huh, interesting. So it's more about the power of each individual core.
Exactly. Having a few really strong cores might actually be better than a bunch of weaker ones.
Makes you wonder if TikToker was on some shared CPU plan, right?
Could be. That could definitely explain the slow performance.
Yeah, makes sense. This whole situation really highlights why clear hardware recommendations are so important.
100%. And speaking of which, the OP-SIG wants to establish some minimum hardware specs for pillar nodes specifically.
Smart move. Get ahead of those potential headaches.
Exactly. They're looking to gather community input on performance metrics and different hardware setups, figure out what that sweet spot is.
So you've got a pillar node that's humming along, share your specs.
Definitely. Now, on to how they're measuring sync speeds. DSNUTS has been using a Python script that tracks the whole process.
Okay, so monitoring things like CPU and memory usage, right?
Yep. But they're also exploring other options, like a Go-based script that uses the Go-Go.
Ooh, interesting. Or maybe even the K6 framework.
Yeah, that one came up. K6 is designed for all sorts of performance testing and reporting. Could be really powerful.
Sounds like they're really aiming to step up their performance testing game.
Oh yeah, they're going all in. One of the more interesting ideas I heard was from Georges. He suggested separating network data transfer from the CPU-intensive verification process during testing.
Okay, break that down for me. Why is that separation so important?
Well, imagine downloading a huge file, right? The download speed is one thing, but then your computer has to process all that data, unpack it, organize it, which can take a while.
So you're saying it's kind of like that with syncing the Xenon blockchain. You're downloading blocks, but then the node has to verify all those transactions.
Right, and that verification is super CPU intensive. By separating those two things, they can really pinpoint the bottlenecks. Is it the network connection? Or is it the CPU getting bogged down with verification?
That's a smart approach. Isolate the variables.
Exactly. Makes troubleshooting way more effective.
Okay, I'm following you. Anything else on the performance front?
Nope, I think that covers it for now.
Yeah.
Let's switch gears a bit. Talk about backups.
Yeah, that was a big focus, especially for pillar nodes.
Absolutely. Having reliable backups is crucial, especially for those mission-critical nodes. DSNUTS is already tackling this head-on, simplifying the process for everyone.
Excellent. What kind of solutions are we talking about here?
Well, they're looking at a few things. Scripts for automated backups, cloud storage integration, for those off-site backups.
Smart. Keep those backups safe and sound.
Exactly. And get this. They even floated the idea of a web-based node management tool.
Hold on. A web-based tool. Tell me more.
Imagine a simple interface right in your browser where you can manage every aspect of your node backups, monitoring all the essentials.
That would be a game changer. Super user-friendly.
Right. It's still early stages, but it shows they're thinking about making node management way more accessible.
Love that. Now, what about that community poll? The one about running a pillar node directly from the Sirius wallet.
Oh yeah, that one got a lot of attention. The OP-SIG acknowledged the demand for that kind of user-friendliness, but they were also realistic about the technical hurdles.
Right. It's not as simple as just flipping a switch.
No, there are security considerations
Yeah.
and some tricky implementation details.
I get it. It's a balancing act between user-friendliness and maintaining the security and robustness of the network.
Exactly, which seems to be a recurring theme in a lot of these discussions, making Xenon both powerful and accessible.
It's a tough needle to thread, but they seem to be doing a great job.
Agreed. They're putting in the work,
Yeah.
and it's paying off.
All right, well, before we get too carried away here, let's take a quick pause. When we come back, we'll wrap things up with some key takeaways and a final thought-provoking question.
Sounds good. We'll be right back after a short break. All right, picking up where we left off. I've got to say, it's really encouraging to see the OPSIG putting so much emphasis on user-friendliness. You know? Especially when it comes to things like backups. For anyone running a Pillar node, having a solid backup and restore process is non-negotiable.
Totally agree with you there. It's one of those things you don't think about until you really need it. And then it's like, oh man, I wish I had taken care of this sooner.
Right. Glad they're focusing on the local backups first. Makes sense to start with the most pressing need and build from there.
Definitely layering on those extra features down the line, like the automated backups to the cloud, or integrating it all into that web-based node management tool they were talking about.
Smart approach, for sure. Incremental improvements.
Love it.
Yeah.
But beyond the technical details, there's a bigger picture idea here that's worth mentioning.
Oh, yeah. Hit me with it.
Decentralization. Remember, one of the core principles of blockchain is eliminating those single points of failure.
For sure. Distribution of power.
Exactly. By making it easier for people to create and manage their own backups, they're reducing reliance on centralized bootstrapping services.
Oh, I see what you're saying. It's not just about spreading out the networks geographically. It's about empowering individuals to take control of their own nodes.
You got it. It's decentralization at the user level.
Nice. Love it when those connections click. Makes the whole ecosystem stronger, more resilient.
And speaking of resilience, let's circle back to those minimum hardware specs for Pillar nodes.
Right. Seems like a small detail, but it's actually huge. In terms of accessibility, I mean.
Absolutely. Having clear guidelines makes it so much easier for people to know what they need to effectively run a Pillar node.
Oh.
No more guesswork.
Exactly. It lowers the barrier to entry, encourages participation, and ultimately strengthens that decentralization we were just talking about.
It's all connected. Okay, so to recap what we've learned from this OPSIG meeting, choosing the right hardware for syncing, the efforts to improve backups, and that overall push for user-friendliness.
Plus, those really interesting insights into performance testing and how they're trying to pinpoint those bottlenecks. Really impressive stuff.
Agreed. They're tackling some serious challenges and exploring some really creative solutions, all in the name of making Xenon more accessible and efficient.
It's an exciting time to be involved in the Xenon community, for sure.
Speaking of which, I think it's time for our final thought-provoking question.
All right, hit us with it.
So, listener, we've talked about how the OPSIG is dedicated to improving the user experience, but we want to hear from you. What features or improvements would you like to see prioritized?
What would make your Xenon experience even better? Head over to the Xenon community channels and let us know. Your input is super valuable, helps shape the future of the network.
It's all about collective effort, right? Building something amazing together.
Couldn't agree more. It's what makes these decentralized projects so cool. And on that note, I think we've covered a lot of ground in this Xenon OPSIG deep dive.
Yeah, we zipped through those highlights pretty efficiently. From TikTokers syncing woes to the dream as a web-based node management tool.
We even touched on some of the deeper philosophical stuff, like what decentralization really means in practice.
Always a good reminder. But before we wrap up, let's emphasize this is just a snapshot of what the OPSIG is working on. These guys are constantly pushing the envelope, exploring new ideas, tackling challenges head on.
Totally. If you're passionate about the tech behind Xenon, the nuts and bolts of how it all works, I highly recommend getting involved. Jump into those OPSIG meetings. Share your expertise.
Exactly. You might just spark the next big innovation. Who knows? The future of Xenon node management could be in your hands.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep pushing the limits. Let's see what we can achieve together with Xenon.